In this first round of CPW Science as a ninth grader, you are going to learn how to select two or more pieces of data from a simple data presentation. You're going to identify similarities and differences between experiments and understand the tools and functions of tools used in a complex experiment. We know we'll be successful when we can read a graph to determine a correct answer, contrast two experiments, and then develop a justification as to the function of a tool in an experiment. In the first question, it asks, based on the results of Study 1, the highest percent of finches on Island B and Island C had a beak depth of, and then it gives you four different options. For this question, we're looking at just Island B, which is in this middle graph, and Island C, which is this last graph. So what that means is that we're not looking at this first bar graph at all. So looking at the graph regarding Island B, I'm following the bar graph. So it looks like the highest bar is at the point where there's 10 millimeter beak depth. And if I go to Island C, I follow that same procedure. The highest bar, or the highest percent of birds captured, has a beak depth of 10 millimeters. So the correct answer to number 1 is D. In question number 2, it asks, during which of the following years were small seeds the most abundant on Island B? So in the introduction to the experiment, they mentioned both large and small seeds. But in the second to last sentence of study number 2, it clearly states that small seeds are abundant during wet years. If you look at the graph, you'll see that there's 4 years pointed out. The only one that's a wet year is 1984. So the correct answer to number 2 is D. Question number 3 asks, Study 1 differed from Study 2 in which of the following ways? And in this particular question, you had to read both studies again to determine how to contrast these two things. In Study 1, research captured both G. fortis and G. fulginosa finches on the island. But in Study number 2, they only mentioned G. fortis. So that leads you to believe that B is the correct answer, that G. fulginosa finches were captured during Study 1, but not during Study 2. Our last question for CPW Science this week asks, it is most likely that the researchers tagged the birds that they captured during Study 1 in order to do what? So in the Study 1 synopsis, it says they tagged each bird, measured its beak depth, and released it. So this implies that they wanted to make sure they didn't take a measurement of a bird they've already done. So in this particular question, the correct answer is D. So to recap, the answers to round 1 of science is D, D, B, D.